shipyards are working at full capacity. You're asking for more money to increase their capacity, but we are literally years behind. And the best-in-class shipyards in the world are in Japan, South Korea, and China. 50 years ago, we had the best shipyards in the world. Today, we do not. And I'm a strong believer that we need to make sure we are protecting America's industrial base and exploring deeper partnerships. You ask for $1.8 billion to study using foreign shipyards and foreign designs. That is a lot for a study. If you could just briefly describe what the point is for that much of a study and what extra capacity you think we might look to our treaty allies to provide, both for servicing, to your point of tyranny of distance, and potentially constructing ships in partnership with us. I'm a big believer in the AUKUS partnership. I think we need to be looking to our close allies and partners as long as we are protecting our domestic shipyards and they have robust and sustained opportunities to contribute to this work.
Ranking Member Kuntz, that's a wonderful question, sir, because the RDT&E we were getting with that is to see the integration of those foreign ships, to see how they fit in our formation. And if it works, we're not buying into foreign shipyards. We're having them invest in the United States. We want them to bring their operations here with the way they're able to crank out a destroyer in 2 years. And that will create basically 540,000 jobs in the United States. And not just to build destroyers and frigates and battleships. We're talking about also merchant ships. Right now, we only have 188, flagged merchant ships and 105 military SEAL command ships, and we need more in the United States. The Chinese have 11,000 merchant ships, and we need to build capacity. That's why to be able to have them invest over here. I mean, my Toyota is not built in Japan; it's built in the United States. So have them build their factories over here, sir.
Hanwha's dramatic commitment to invest in the Philly shipyard is just one of many such investments. Is it your testimony then that you're not considering any production overseas, only investments in U.S. shipyards?
Well, obviously, initially we would have to see how they build those ships over there, and then bring American workers over there, learn the way their modalities, how they work, and how they're able to streamline processes. Bring that over here in the United States, sir.
You've been, but we've encouraged Taiwan to buy arms from us, and all of a sudden there's a pause. What are you hearing from the Taiwanese about the pause?
Chairman, I have not heard. I have not spoken to the Taiwanese. However, we have done some foreign military sales to them, and it's just right now we're doing a pause in order to make sure we have the munitions we need for Epic Fury, which we have plenty, but we're just making sure we have everything. But then the foreign military sales will continue when the administration deems necessary, sir.
Put another way, do you expect the sale to be approved at some point?
Senator, that would be up to the Secretary of War and the Secretary of State, sir.
Yeah, well, that's what's really distressing. Belatedly, the administration seems to be mad at the Europeans for not engaging in the Middle East. But as a practical matter, without basing and sustainment from NATO allies, we wouldn't be able to project power in the Middle East. So what role should NATO play out in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, Chairman, first of all, NATO playing a role, I would love to see NATO doing some demining in the Straits also. I mean, this is a mutually beneficial for all the world if we can clear the Straits right now and really provide security. And NATO, again, would be a great ally to us in the Pacific just to maintain the sea lanes of communication. We, the United States, are a maritime nation. We depend on the Pacific and the Atlantic for free trade, and the world does also. And so this is why we need to all work together to protect the sea lanes of communications for the world, sir.
I think the way to think about NATO is it's important not only for the Europeans and ourselves, but for the rest of the world. They're looking at NATO, coming to NATO meetings from the Pacific. This is a potential framework for us to be the leader of the free world, all the world, not just Europe, because we all know who our adversaries are: China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. They all have one thing in common: they hate us. So we can either stand up to that or hunker down and hope for the best. Finally, Ms. Secretary, fiscal year 26, we funded naval drone and counter-drone capabilities by full-year appropriations. This year's request would only fund Navy drone programs in reconciliation. Do you have some view about that?
Oh, I'm sorry, is this Sino? I'm sorry, good. Would you like the Sino to answer that, Chairman, or myself?
Admiral.
Chairman McConnell, the risk of, not having the total discretionary and mandatory bill is significant for the Navy. We've in the opening statements that have been made by you and others, we take risk in munitions, we take risk in F-35, and we take risk in FISRAM to maintain our facilities, our foundry, as I like to call it. So, if the majority of the counter UAS and counter drone technologies and capabilities are in the mandatory, and that's not funded, of course, I take risk there. And so that's why, for me as a service chief, the passing of the total bill is so vital for me.
What specific lessons has the Navy learned from what's going on in Ukraine? It's all been described as the Silicon Valley of warfare. I'm wondering if any of the senior Navy leaders have been to Ukraine and to gather lessons firsthand from the front lines of modern warfare.
Chairman McConnell, there's a lot of lessons. One, how you command and control forces. Two, how you have great intelligence apparatus, sustained ISR, and not only just ISR for targeting and getting valid targets that actually, cripple the supply and logistics and force correlation nodes of an adversary, but the actual ISR to do battle damage assessment is vital. We've seen the outsized asymmetric effort that's been able to be done by the Ukrainian forces, leveraging robotic and autonomous systems, but that requires great targeting to go do that. And so that's been a piece of that. So, logistics win wars, we know that. And so that's been a big lessons learned. And we've seen that it takes partnerships, to actually sustain Ukraine against a much larger force that Russia fields. So there's been a lot of lessons that we've looked at very hard and that we will use and leverage in our own fights.
Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Cow, Admiral Cottle, General Smith, thank you all for being here this morning. General Smith, over the last several years, this subcommittee has supported the Marine Corps' efforts to transform into a more mobile and capable force prepared to fight in a potential naval war in the Pacific. Can you describe the importance of the medium landing ship to the Marine Corps' approach to fighting this war?
Senator, I can, and thank you for that question. The LSM, or landing ship medium, we always have to do landing ship comma medium in the Marine Corps. It's just the way we do it. It is an inter-island connector. It enables our forces to aggregate and disaggregate rapidly and to go to places that other conventional Navy ships cannot go because of beach gradients. So it allows us to have access to the totality of the first island chain, and it's vital. It's going to bring our medium missile batteries, our Nemesis, our Navy Marine ship interdiction system. It's going to bring all that to bear in places that otherwise the adversary would not have to calculate when they look at their ISR platform, when they look at where are they focusing their intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Now they have to look at the totality of the map.
Thank you. The current requirement laid out by the Navy and Marine Corps is to procure 35 medium landing ships. How critical to the Marine Corps is it for the U.S. to build at least 35 of them?
Ma'am, it's vital because we're going to need to move the forces that need to be moved. Those forces in 3 MEF, 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force, are going to have to be moved. And even 1 MEF, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force out of Camp Pendleton, once they move forward, they're going to have the ability to move around the first island chain. And again, the LSM blends itself in with commercial shipping. It looks like any other small ship that's transiting the area. There's some exquisite capabilities that we can put on it that we can't talk about in an open hearing, but we could talk about in a closed hearing that will enable to, quote, fuzz it up so that it looks like any other tramp steamer that's out there.
And then the Navy expects to be building medium landing ships for about the next decade. At the same time, President Xi has directed the People's Liberation Army to be prepared to take Taiwan by force as soon as next year. So time is of the essence if the U.S. is to maintain our military edge in the Pacific. Do you believe it is important to Marine Corps readiness to acquire medium landing ships as quickly as we can?
Absolutely, ma'am. There's a saying, if your neighbor says he's going to kill you, you should believe him.
Yeah.
So,
thank you. Secretary Cow, I am very concerned that the Navy's request for funding to procure 6 medium landing ships was included in the partisan and mandatory spending part of the department's budget request. That request is outside the jurisdiction of this subcommittee and is in serious danger, I think, of not passing this year. That makes me question the Navy's commitment to maintaining this program. So what is the Navy's backup plan for procuring medium landing ships if the administration's partisan spending request fails to advance?
Senator, I share your concerns that we need this whole $1.5 trillion. The Navy and Marine Corps have taken a lot of hits over 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, ma'am. And so that's why we need this one-time budget in order to fix all these things. However you appropriate to us, whether 1 bill or 2 bills, we're completely agnostic to that as a Navy and Marine Corps. We need that in order to build these medium landing ships. And again, Fincantieri is going to turn it out quickly. And I know that's why we're going with a design that's already proven, it's already built, and we're not going to deviate from that like we did with the previous models. That's why it's so imperative that we get the $1.5 trillion, especially for the Navy and Marine Corps, to get the $377.5 billion, ma'am.
Yeah, but, well, President Trump and this administration talk a lot about wanting to build more ships in America, and I absolutely agree with that. But bringing back our domestic shipbuilding industry requires a consistent demand signal, and decisions like these jeopardize the stability of the medium landing ship program and the thousands of jobs, including those in Wisconsin, which depend on it. So do you agree that consistent demand is important to our shipbuilding industry? And if so, why wasn't the request for the medium landing ship funding included in the Navy's base budget like all other battle force ships?
Senator, again, we need, however we get this money, we need it all for to fix the Navy and Marine Corps. And I know you weren't here for my opening statement, but my son's going to be commissioned in the United States Marine tomorrow from the United States Naval Academy. I cannot have him go to war the way I did. We just can't do this to our sailors and Marines. These are American sons and daughters, and we owe it to them to give them what they need. And this is why we just need to get this out. But when we're balancing the needs of quality of life, quality service, housing for them, pay and everything else, it's just the way the budget was laid out, ma'am.
Yeah, it's a problem that it's laid out that way because the Navy and Marine Corps both emphasize the importance of procuring the medium landing ships quickly. Do you support procuring them as quickly as our shipyards are able to build them?
Senator, I do support building them as quickly as possible and getting as many as we can possibly get.
Let me try again on the question I asked you earlier about which of the Navy leaders have been to Ukraine.
Sir, I can't tell you in total how many Navy leaders have been there. I have not been to Ukraine, but I do know that the commander of naval forces Europe and Africa which headquartered out of Naples, Italy, and Commander Sixth Fleet have been there. And if they haven't been there exactly on boots on ground, they certainly have been to all the Black Sea states that surround it. And they work very closely every single day with the Ukrainian Navy and their entire joint force to support their needs to the extent the United States Navy can.
What about the civilian leadership?
Senator, I have not been to Ukraine yet, but I've in my previous life, when I was in uniform, I did send some of our operators there. I'm very familiar with the research and development we're doing in Ukraine. I know the former U.S. Naval Forces Europe and Africa was one of my longtime mentors, Admiral Stu Munch. He knows that area extremely well, and his forces operated there both as NATO and U.S. forces, sir.
I know you guys are not policymakers, but let me say again that an effort to cut off help for Ukraine is not going to work in the Senate or in the House. We put in $400 million last year, and we had to embarrass the administration in public to get them to actually spend it. We're going to have additional Ukraine money this year. I would say to the policymakers at the White House and the Pentagon, the American people are in favor of us helping Ukraine. Republicans are in favor of us helping Ukraine. Democrats are in favor of helping Ukraine. We're pretty together on this issue, so we're not going away. One final question. What are the specific objectives of U.S. strategy up in the Arctic? What role will Arctic allies like Denmark and Norway play in achieving them?
Sir, I can address some of that. I'm a huge proponent of the Arctic. In my job at U.S. Police Forces, as the NORTHCOM component commander, I think played a vital role with the NORTHCOM team to enhance our presence in the Arctic. We do that in partnership with the European Command and Indo-Pacific Command commander. I kind of break it down a couple ways. One, it's important to have presence there. You got to walk the battlefield. So that means operating above the Arctic Circle consistently with surface ships, with aircraft carriers, and of course our submarine force. Second, you have to have special capabilities to be successful up there. That means communication systems that can work at high latitudes. It means systems on board that can handle those temperatures. And it means understanding flows of marginal ice zone and the weather conditions up there. They're significant, and the climate is quite something. And the third thing, you have to have partners and allies. And the Arctic Council team is that we all are part of NATO now, with the exception of Russia. So partnerships matter above the Arctic Circle. So Finland, Sweden, Norway, of course, and a big one is Canada, of course. And we do a lot of operations with them. We just came off our biannual exercise called ISEX, where we're just there with, where we do that every 2 years. We know the Russians want to actually, call it their own. They'd like a 9-dash line around the North Pole, and we're not going to let that happen. We know that China wants to call the Arctic a near, Arctic nation state. We're not going to let them operate up there without being contested either. And so it's very important. And this goes to what we're doing in Alaska and the recapitalization and the facilitization of some of the places we're working in with the senators from Alaska. This goes to collaboration with the Coast Guard and what we're doing to rebuild their ice-breaking fleet and how we sustain their operations. So the Arctic's extremely important. Trillions of dollars of minerals, natural gas, oil, and rare earths. And the United States has to have a presence there, sir.
Speaking of Denmark, after the suggestion that somehow we wanted to take Greenland, how are we getting along with the Denmark NATO member?
Sir, Denmark is a very close naval ally. We do a lot with Denmark. They punch way above their weight class, very sophisticated set of capabilities to protect the Atlantic GI-UK gap, from out of area Russian deployers is extremely important. They know it's important from an early warning radar system to understand ICBM threats and other threats could approach our homeland.
So whatever concern there may have been, you think is blown over?
Sir, I won't speak to the political aspects of that, but I can just tell you, Navy to Navy, we're strong with Denmark.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony today. I'm just going to pick up on a theme that you've heard from all of us, from the first questions from Senator Kennedy to the last questions from the chairman to that recent engagement. With our allies, we are strong. With our allies, we can project force. With our allies, we can deter China, Russia, Iran, DPRK. They are increasingly aligned, but we increasingly are not. I led a bipartisan delegation, a bipartisan bicameral delegation to Denmark the same week our president threatened to take Greenland by force from our NATO ally, Denmark. I appreciate your testimony, Admiral, that at the Navy to Navy level, we're strong. But their capabilities are not just terrific. Their service alongside us when we asked in Afghanistan was outstanding. And their sacrifice as we come to our Memorial Day, we should not forget. 52 Danes died in service in Afghanistan. And as Senator Tillis and Senator Murkowski and Senator Durbin and I were there at the memorial to the Danes who served and died alongside us, we should not forget that when our president says we never asked NATO for anything and they never did anything for us, that's heard loud and clear by our NATO allies. I am gravely concerned that in the Arctic, where the Canadians are stepping up and investing, we're walking away from a decades-old partnership with them. In Europe, where Russia is the single greatest threat to our security and stability, we're putting at risk the trust that we've earned by abruptly announcing withdrawals of thousands of American troops in a way that is not clearly planned or executed. And the chairman referenced the $400 million. When the secretary was in front of us, he got asked by several of us, we appropriated $400 million last year for Ukraine. Has it been spent? No. When will we get a spend plan? Last week. Do we have it today? No. I know this is above your pay grade, but Mr. Secretary, I hope you will convey, as you've heard from many of us, from the first questions from the chairman to my last question now, you're submitting a budget that puts things across the line from base budget to reconciliation, munitions, shipbuilding, the LSM that is essential to your ability to fight and win in the Western Pacific. If the reconciliation piece of this doesn't go through, we are going to have even bigger problems this year than last. So let me just briefly ask about those two things. Commandant, how important is it that you have the LSMs in the year ahead, and what will you do if that does not come through in reconciliation? How will that impact your warfighting capability?
Well, we'll be less mobile, we'll be less able to aggregate and disaggregate, and we'll be less able to contend with the PRC.
And is the major adversary for whom you are currently planning and for which we are currently investing in the Western Pacific, the PRC?
It is, sir.
Admiral Caudle, we spoke before and you've spoken now about how the Ukrainians have demonstrated remarkable mastery of naval drones. And in fact, they've pushed back Russia's Black Sea Fleet significantly. What happens to the Navy if your significant munitions request, which is divided between reconciliation, is denied and you don't get those munitions? And what does that do to shipbuilding, drones, and munitions for this coming year?
Sir, that's why it's so important. You know, the way I put it into a context, my base budget is about $270 billion. About a tenth of that, 1/10, is in my mandatory. You know, so, you know,